everybody. Welcome back to Black Tea. I am your host, Michelle Lawrence, and this is the series that is all about Black women in advertising, presented by and hosted on Muse by Clio. Today, I am so happy to be here with Rochelle Webb. Hey, Rochelle.
Hello.
How are you? How's it going? How's the West Coast?
I know we miss you, first of all. It's not the same without you, but we are good. Things are opening back up. And so we're actually starting to live life again. I went to a restaurant in West Hollywood and it felt completely normal last night. So it's awesome.
It's the little things.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell the people what you do and where you're based.
Yes, I am based in Los Angeles, California, and I am the CEO of a company called Optimist Made. I also teach entrepreneurship and marketing at a university here in Los Angeles called Loyola Marymount University.
Nice. How did you find your way into advertising?
I knew from a pretty early age that I wanted to be in advertising. I went to school in Boston, and when I graduated, I just had my eye fixed on like finding that advertising job. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and so my goal was to sort of save up a bunch of money, move to the West Coast and find that gig, or go to New York, actually, where my brother was at the time, and a lot of the big agencies and companies were based. It was a terrible economy, and I was sick of being cold in Boston, so I nixed New York. And I came to Los Angeles thinking I'd go back eventually, and took a little windy road, and then eventually got my first job, finally in advertising, and just it was everything I thought it would be, and I just kept chasing sort of the next venture one after another. My very first job actually came through just networking. I just started pounding the pavement in Los Angeles and talking to anyone that would listen. And finally, I met somebody who had a sister that worked at an agency who introduced me to the HR person. And that's how I got my first job.
Mm-hmm. It really is still so much about who you know, and it's crazy. But you're putting the work in, or you put the work in to know those right people and make it happen for yourself. So that is just a story of determination. That's really dope.
Yeah.
And now here you are, CEO of your own company, Optimist Made. So I know that you guys have the underlying current of just always stimulating the underdog economy. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, so Optimist Made is a curated marketplace that's tech enabled, actually. So, what I do is I've always felt like an underdog myself. As a Black woman, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I went to a predominantly white college. I moved to Los Angeles, and most of the jobs were filled by white people. And so I always felt othered, and I always felt like I had to work a lot harder to be seen and be heard. And but I knew what I wanted and I wasn't willing to give up on that. And so I just kept my eye really focused on getting what I wanted by any means necessary. I eventually reached a point in my career where I felt I was at a cap. And frankly, I did feel that I know for a fact in one of the last companies I worked for that it was, it was they didn't have any women or people of color in senior leadership positions. And it was just very evident to me after a while that I was never going to get promoted. And it just became clear to me that I'm going to run into this a lot of places. And if I want to have a senior leadership position, I have to create it for myself, which is very much how I created my career history. It was like creating opportunities by figuring out how to find the people that could help get me there. And then, so I created this company so that I could be in command of my own destiny. And when I created it, it was important to me to help other people that felt like me because I want to eliminate that feeling for as many people as possible. So I go find the fashion industry is a very competitive space, and there's tons of designers that are trying their damnedest to make it in that industry. And so it's my goal to go find these underground designers that have insane talent and could very easily compete at the top, but they'll never get discovered because they're in the wrong place. They don't know the right people. They don't have the business acumen to know how to get themselves seen and heard. They can't afford to go to the trade shows. And I'm like, why are we wasting this talent with them sitting someplace where no one's going to see them?
Yeah.
So I find them, I groom them, and then I break them, and I start making introductions. I become their agent, and then there's a technology piece on the end that we leverage to sort of create new content off the back of their collections. So it's a lot of
Wow.
fun.
So, how does a designer or an underdog otherwise get in touch with Optimist Made? Like, what initiates this process?
So right now I really control that sort of seek and finding mission, and it's pretty it's pretty low tech actually. So I will just pick a country. I mean, in the early days of the company, I was just trying to build a proof of concept and seeing if this thing would actually work. And
Yeah.
I travel a lot for work anyways, and so what I was doing was just adding on a few days and meeting with designers on the end of business trips,
Okay.
or vacation. And so, but now I just sort of pick interesting countries that you don't normally hear about, designers coming out of when you look at the mainstream offering. And I go through Instagram and I just type in interesting designers in X country, let's say
Yeah.
Colombia, and then I see what comes up in that in my feed, and I just start looking and clicking and seeing what their product looks like. I see how they're tagged. I see how people are reacting and engaging with them. And if I'm still convinced there's something there, I literally send them like a two-line DM, and I'm like, I'm gonna be in your city, even though I have no intention of being in their city yet. And I'm like, do you have time to meet with me? And if they say yes to that note in that meeting, I'm like, I know they're hungry because they are willing, like how I was when I started my career, to take any meeting, have any conversation, and by any means necessary, try to make it. And once I have about 3 meetings set up, then I'll book the plane ticket and I'll go out there. And then I usually go to markets. And then once you meet one designer and they hear what I do, they're like, I know the perfect person for you. So they introduced me to a lot of people. I just came back from Hawaii, and I have two best friends that are going to be joining because they both just had a really interesting point of view in their collection, and I loved them and I loved their story. So yeah, so a lot of times my designers help me find them, and then also my friends. They'll be like, oh, I went there. I saw all these cool designers, and they'll send me all this information on all the cool collections they saw when they were traveling. So it's kind of a mixed pot, but my normal sort of, way I go about it is by using IG.
Okay. Wow. That's quite a process. And how long has Optimist Made been in effect?
It's been about 2.5 years that we've been
Okay.
up and running since the launch of the site, and we've been growing. We have 20 designers. We're in 5 different geographies around the world, and we're still pushing.
Okay. Do you feel like you might be making a true departure from advertising anytime soon?
I mean, advertising's always going to be connected to anything I do. I mean, it's connected to everything we all do. I mean, how does anyone know you exist without advertising? So, no, I don't. And I teach it as well. And so, and it's important to me to take what I've been given and give back to the next generation. And so, I believe that I will be for a very long time teaching the subject matter, because you don't often find a lot of practical professors, who've actually been working. A lot of them are academics, and they are PhDs, and so I have a lot of war stories to share about actual work that I've done, and the students really respond to that, and so it's important to me to keep giving that back. So no, I don't think I'll ever take a complete departure from advertising.
Yeah. What is one of those war stories? One of the ones that you find yourself bringing up with students a lot, or one that you feel like give provided you with a lot of takeaways and learning points?
Yeah, I would say to own your. Can we say the word behind you on that board?
Yes.
Own your shit, because no one should. Early on in my career, a woman that had hired me that really influenced my career to a great degree said no one hides under their desk, and I 1,000% agree with that. The more you try to hide from your mistakes, the less you grow. The entrepreneurial mindset is all about growing from failure. It's about seeing opportunity and falling, and then and failing up. And I think that oftentimes people are so hard on themselves, and they feel like if they don't execute something perfectly, or they get feedback that they're a terrible person or they're not good at what they do, and that's actually not the case. Because I tell my students all the time, if someone's taking the time to give you feedback, it's because they A, believe in you, and B, they want to see you grow. And so you should take that and treat it as a gift. And so one day, back in sort of the middle part of my career, I was working on a really huge account. It was a very fast pace. There was a lot of moving parts to it. My background's in media and branded partnerships, so I, was dealing with a lot of numbers, and there were a lot of different partners that were in play, in this particular role. And so there's certain things as an agency that you have transparency to, like cost and and unit cost, that that you see from the media owners that you're potentially going to partner with. And then if you have a third party partner that's going to come into the mix with you, you don't want to show them all those costs, right? So they're going to contribute. You want them to feel like they're getting this value for the amount that you've stated, and it is what it is. And so it was really important that we never sent a certain document that had full transparency in it over to any third party. And I was moving really quickly. I was doing a bunch of things at the same time, and I pushed send on an email because I had to get out urgently, and it had that document in it. And it went out to like a whole list of very
Yeah,
important people that we're not supposed to see that.
yeah,
And as soon as I sent it, it was one of those things where you wanted to reach into your computer and just grab. I was like, oh my God, I
yeah.
attached the wrong document, and I was freaking out. I was losing my mind physically at my desk. I was like, I don't
Shout
know
out
what
to
to
the
do
new
anymore.
Gmail feature that lets you undo sending an email for like I think like 5 seconds now, but like it's
Yeah.
definitely it was not always there, and I wish
No.
it was.
And the whole like retracting emails never works. And so I tried that, and it was like, and people were waiting for it, so they were opening it immediately. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm gonna definitely lose my job. I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because like, how am I gonna pay my bills? Like, I'm definitely getting fired right now. And I was just like, nope. I remember what that woman said to me. She said to not hide under your desk. And I walked. I mean, I thought I was going to throw up with every step I took to my boss's desk. And I said, I have something to tell you. And I said, I'm very, very sorry. And I just owned it. And I said it, but this is when she just looked at me. And it's when you own something, people want to work with you to figure out how to fix it. And like, she's like, well, first of all, we know now you'll never do this again, right? And I was like, never again. And she was like, well, that's the most important lesson. Sometimes you just have to mess up once to remember to be extra careful the next time. And she really worked with me on how to like manage the situation. And I didn't get fired. And in fact, it made our relationship better. Because I showed vulnerability, she showed vulnerability because she was compassionate to the fact that I was so scared, and it really did help going forward, like the whole dynamic of our relationship. So that is my biggest recommendation. I tell it to students all the time: check your work, but
Yeah.
also when you make mistakes, own it.
Wow, that is really brave, and it sounds simple, but it's really, really, really hard to do. So, shout out to you for that, and it looks like it super paid off with your career. Cut to you being a CEO of your own company. How is it owning a Black-owned business and running a Black-owned business? Or do you feel like there are any challenges that are unique to owning a Black-owned business?
Oh, yes. uh, First of all, I love it because I always knew that I would be entrepreneurial in some aspect of my career, whether that's entrepreneurial within a big company, or I figured I pretty much would start something eventually. So I'm glad that I finally landed where I intended to be. But so it's empowering to be, to have be in charge of yourself and your vision and see that come to life, and to see how people respond to it and how excited they get. And that's really what proves to me that I'm building something awesome, is the feedback I get from people. I love what you're doing. Oh my gosh, I love your posts. I love reading everything about like all the stories of people, and like everything that I imagine this company to be, people are playing that back to me, which means it's doing what it's supposed to do. So I love that element of it. It's The numbers are out there. You can look them up. There are like less than 50 Black women who've raised over $1 million in venture funding, which is absolutely ridiculous when you consider how many trillions of dollars have been invested in companies over the years. There are something like less than 1% of investments go to women of color, Black women. So they're the numbers are just staggering against how supported as a Black person you are as an entrepreneur. And so I really did start my own company so that I could grow in my career. But then here you find a whole new set of issues where you can't grow without money. So I've spent all this time working really hard to prove the concept, but then it's like you get passed over for everybody else that doesn't look like you. So this movement of Black Lives Matter has been an enlightenment process for a lot of people, and I feel like we're making some progress. I feel like right now it's still a lot of talking about it and thinking about it, and it's not really people putting money where their mouth is and really taking that step, or they're kind of halfway doing it. Like, I'm going to invest in this company because there's a couple Black people in leadership there, but it's just I think we'll get there. I do believe that, but it's just that's the hardest part is I'm at the really important phase right now where I need to show traction. I need to show that people believe in me by writing big checks.
Yeah.
And they're really hard to get. I mean, a Black woman in entrepreneurship is like the worst thing you can be. I mean, it's like Arlen Hamilton is a huge VC, a Black woman VC, and LGBTQ, and she calls Black people underestimated. And I mean, that's because that's how the world sees us. And so I always hear that word and think to myself, damn, like, people don't even like, you have to work so hard to prove to people like, I'm not underestimated, I'm a real deal. But it's like, but a lot of people don't walk in a room like that. They start with the A and it's theirs to lose. It's like, I feel like I'm constantly walking in a room starting with an F and trying to earn my way up to the A, which is a lot of hard work.
I do know. And I feel that even though I do not own a business, just being in the industry, and probably in most industries, you feel like you constantly have to prove your qualifications, even though your qualifications got you to where you are. So it is
Yeah.
very interesting. But in addition to being this powerhouse, you also volunteer on the board of a charity that is near and dear to my heart, Ad Relief of Greater Los Angeles. Talk a little bit about why it was important for you to be a part of that organization, and for those in the industry who may not know what the organization is.
Yeah, I mean, I think by now, hearing my story, I'm a bleeding heart to help others. It's like, I teach students because I want them to walk confidently through their professional lives. I created a company that helps people that aren't normally seen and heard. Ad Relief is an organization that picks people up that have fallen unexpected hard times. And that when they think that it's impossible to pick themselves back up again, we come in and we give them that stimulus of help that they need to turn their lives around in that moment. And it's a perfect mirror to everything else that I'm doing professionally. And so when I heard about, because believe me, I've been there before, and I've just been lucky that the right helping hand came at the right time. And I know how that feels. And I know how it feels to feel that you can't turn yourself around, and that you think that the end is here because like this thing that happened to you that you didn't ask for, you didn't expect, and it's like you have no control over it. Happened to you, you have control over how you react to it. But sometimes that what you need isn't right in front of you, and so the fact that we can help put the things that people need right in front of them when they need it is so exciting to me, because you can see the immediate cause and effect of the work that the organization does. And so, and I had known about this organization. I've been a part of a lot of their events for many years before I joined the board. So I saw firsthand the types of situations they helped people out of. And I always thought that was so amazing and such heroic work. And so it was a no-brainer to join their board. And I think you and I were actually joining around the same time. So um yeah, I love the work that we do there.
Yeah, I miss the whole board. That team is near and dear to me, LA-based team. And yeah, it's just nice to, I mean, your work, your professional work is also gives back, as you mentioned. But for most folks in advertising, that is not the case. And, for me, it was not the case. And it was nice to be able to give back something, to sort of balance out, you know, advertising and what it is that I know I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, which is convincing people to spend money. So
Yeah.
it's like, how can I sort of even out my career carbon footprint a little bit and find
Yeah.
ways to give back? So that's kind of where
We
I was at with it.
we miss you so much. Your name comes up like at every board meeting in some way, somehow. So you'll have to come back and visit. Come to our events that you helped birth,
Yes,
and make
I would
better.
love to get back to LA. I'm telling you, I need a humidity break. And it's been
Yeah.
like 2 months, but I'm just like, um, okay, so let's talk about travel. I know that you like to get around the globe. Do you have any favorite location so far or place that you haven't been yet that you really want to go?
So I had to use Colombia as an example earlier because it was the next place I was intended to go for sourcing before the pandemic hit. So that is very high up on my list of places I want to get to. I'm hungry to get back out to Asia. Ever since I started teaching, you don't really get to take vacation unless it's summer or winter break because classes still need to keep going. So whereas in a job, you can say I'm taking a week or two off or whatever. So it makes it very challenging for me to get out to Asia because it's such a long trip. And so I'm hungry to get out there, get to Thailand, Cambodia. There's a lot of cool places out there that I just haven't touched yet that I really like to get out to. Um, Funny enough, I love Ireland. It was one of the last countries that I brought into Optimist Made, but there's something so magical. It is so green and lush, and the people are so nice, and the food is actually really good there. And you everything is pretty close together. I mean, you can get anywhere, like a lot of different places in an hour and a half, 2 hours. And
Yeah.
so, I went the first time I went there, I think I went to like 16 different cities in 10 days. Just because, I stayed in a central area of Ireland and I just did the day trips every day. And it was really cool because I really felt like I got to see the country. The locals were like, "You've been more places than we've been, and I've lived here my whole life and never left." So I love that. I love living like a local when I travel. That's really important to me. So even when I go on sourcing trips, I usually on my first or second meeting with a designer, I become their BFF. I'm like, we're best friends, and then they take me under their wing. They're like, "I want to show you this restaurant. I want to show you this lounge. I want to show you this store." And they end up driving me around, but it's really cool because I get to really visit the country just like as if I lived there. And
Yeah.
so when I
I
come back, I can talk about it not like a tourist, but as someone who knows where all the hidden nooks and crannies are, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Wow. I've never heard that much about Ireland. Like just what you said right then is the most I've heard from someone giving me their firsthand experience about visiting there.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I know we are running out of time. I have one more question I want to ask you.
Okay.
Um, Tennis. You're big on tennis. How did you get into it? When did you get into it?
Yeah, so my parents worked full time. So my dad was an airline pilot, so he
Oh,
was
that's cool.
gone a lot, which made my mom feel kind of like a single mom because she didn't have anyone to help with like school pickups and things like that. And so my brother and I mean, my parents are amazing people and worked very hard. Let me make that clear. But we were like latchkey kids because they had to do what they had to do. So my brother and I were sort of like we became very independent at a pretty young age, me more than my brother, but everyone thought I was the older sister, but even though he's older. And so as a result of that, my mom was always trying to get us into activities, just fill time, because she didn't get off to work until 5. We got out of school at 2:45, and the summers they were gone, and she wanted us out of the house so we couldn't like burn it down. And so she got us into swimming, and like through our neighborhood we could walk to there was like a clubhouse in the neighborhood where they'd had a lot of these summer activities and camps and things. And so she got us into swimming and tennis in the summers, and we could just walk ourselves there and walk ourselves home. It was really easy. She didn't need to be there to facilitate that. And so and I just had this love for being on the court and like I'm a strategist, and so tennis is a lot of strategy. But then it's having the ability to control. So it's being able to see where your opponent is and then see where the shot is to get around them, and then knowing how to use your physicality to make that happen. And so all the dynamics of like just having to use all of that stuff as a collective was really interesting to me because it was a constant challenge, and it's a fast paced game, and so I really fell in love with it. But the hardest part is you need someone else to play. So I played all through high school, and then I just never really had anyone to play with, so I hadn't picked up a racket in like, 15 years. And then suddenly I just started finding people that played and started getting back out there. And recently, I was in Costa Rica, and I met this woman who used to be a pro tennis player who now has her own camp, or clinic in Costa Rica. And so she and I played every day that I was there, and it really got it back for me. I'm like, yes, like I want to be on the court again. So now I'm more determined than ever to find people to play with on a regular basis. But yeah, I love it.
That is fun. Maybe I really should do some sort of a tennis tournament thing as a
Yeah,
fundraiser. That'd be cool.
yeah.
Um, thank you so much for chatting with me, Rochelle. It's been good just to catch up with you, but also to learn more about your company and what you're doing. So much for the industry. You're a force, and the industry is lucky to have you, honestly. Thanks for what you're doing as far as teaching and all that. You're the bomb. You're the bomb.
Oh, thanks for having me, and it's so good to see your face and to spend this time with you. I feel so lucky. So
Aw.
I miss you.
That's our show, y'all. Thank you so much for watching Black Tea. Please go to musebycleo.com/Black Tea to check out more episodes. Bye.